I came back from that trip. I was crushed. They had 3 scholarships, and my family couldn't afford to send me. And I was number 4, so I just missed. And it's like, oh man, what am I gonna do? Because I was working in the mines at the time, so I was a mile under. And I was like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I couldn't imagine myself being there like 40 years and not being able to draw and create. I get home, my mom is waiting at the door and she's crying. She has a letter from Otis Parsons in Los Angeles, and they had offered me a full ride scholarship. The Secret of Kells was their college project, and so they'd been working on it.
Amazing.
And they had just gotten a little bit of money from the government. We were working in an old orphanage. So I was the only one that had done any directing. He said, could you go over for a couple months? And I said, okay, sure. Was way out of my depth there. I was like 23 or 24 at the time.
All right. Well, welcome to Artist Lunchbox. I have a very special and dear friend. I probably say that all the time, but it's true. I've got I met Tod Polson. Oh my goodness, it's over 30 years ago. It's probably over 33 years ago, actually.
Early 90s, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 1990. We're gonna go into a whole bunch of stuff today, Tod, and I don't know if we get through it all. I hope we do. But one of the things that I like to focus on with Artist Lunchbox is basically nourishing the creative spirit. Our industry is constantly in shifting sands and changing times, and I think we were in the industry at a very magical time, coming from different phases from analog to digital, and now where we are now today. So we also really like to focus on the creative spirit from an independent artist standpoint as well. And we'll get to that at the end here. And I know you've been in that space for a long time as well. So I'll just do a brief introduction to you, because really it's amazing. When I started going into some of the things, I was like, man, I've known Tod for a long time, but I want to know about this. I want to know about that. So anyway, so Tod is an incredible artist, designer, color stylist, art director. I'm sure producer hat's in there as well.
Sometimes.
And educator and lecturer as well, and just an incredible person, very, very kind spirit, and super talented. So Tod Polson, welcome to Artist Lunchbox.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yes.
I like to just really try and go in order as much, because my simple brain likes to think in a linear fashion.
Helps me too.
Yeah. What part of the country did you grow up in, Tod?
I grew up in Wyoming, on a ranch there.
Beautiful.
I'm 3rd or 4th generation rancher, but the cows didn't like me, so I didn't like the cows anyway. And it's cold there, so.
Wow.
But no, I always grew up drawing, and it took a long time for my dad to kind of accept that, but he finally did. So I kind of was the first one to break out, and kind of do my own thing.
From ranching, yeah.
Yeah.
Was anybody else artistic at all, doing any sort of art or anything like that?
Well, my grandfather was a musician, and
There you go.
my grandma painted, my aunt painted. So yeah, my grandfather was part of the Sons of the Pioneers, or what the group before the Sons of the Pioneers, and he was with Roy Rogers and those guys way back in the 40s and 30s. And
Wow. That's a story right there, I'm sure.
yeah.
So you're drawing. What part of Wyoming is this? Is this?
It's the southwest corner, so it's south of Jackson Hole and
Oh, I love Jackson
Yellowstone,
Hole. Yeah,
and just across the border from Utah there in Idaho.
it's a beautiful part of the country. I absolutely
It
love
is.
Wyoming, actually. So you're doing this drawing as a young kid. You're drawing your
Mhm.
whole life. Are you into comic books or cartoons or animation? Like, what are you doing when
Kinda.
you're 16 years old and you're
Right.
doing art? What are you
I
being inspired by?
Well, a lot of everything. I mean, I was just trying to take everything in. I mean, it was a blessing because growing up, my town at the time was like 800 people or less.
Wow.
And but there's a really high percentage of really creative people there. I think because there's nothing else to do, perhaps.
Mm,
But um, In junior high school, I had a teacher, Tara Taylor. Elementary school, I had a couple of teachers. Kathy Hamblin was one of my teachers,
I love
and
it.
then just amazing artists. And then when I got into high school, a man named Dennis Freeman, he's like still one of the best cartoonists I know, just
Wow.
happened to be there in this little town. And so, of course, I gravitated to him instantly, and we became, now we're really good friends. But at the time, he became a mentor, and he's a man of faith too. So
Yeah.
he was trying to balance that, and I learned a lot from
Yeah.
him, just how he balanced faith and
Yeah.
art and all those things. And
Well, you're very fortunate at that age to, and I know we're gonna get more into it. I I also like to bring up the strength of having strong mentors,
yes, right,
and apprenticeships.
yes,
And if you had a mentor that was grounded as an established artist, but also a person of faith, as we'll talk about, that's a huge help, tremendous.
it is, yeah,
If
for
you'd be
sure.
able to do that, really amazing,
Well,
really
because
amazing.
I think your faith and whatever it is you believe, it help kind of guides and dictates your art and what the
Yeah,
things you're interested in being
sure,
involved with.
sure.
So
So at a young age, you already had a love of God at a
yes,
young age. That's awesome.
I
That's fantastic.
I yeah, I was called to missions actually. I went forward during I was raised Southern Baptist in vacation Bible school. So they had a call, they had some missionaries that had come through, and I went forward wanting to work as a missionary. That was going to be but I was going to use art. I was already like, I was telling
Uh,
God what I was going to do.
that's awesome.
Not,
Well, it is.
not exactly, but that's what he put on my heart anyway. So
Yeah, well, it is a form of our worship in many ways as
it
artists. So,
is, yes.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But it's amazing that you're thinking that way already as a teenager. So it's like,
Yeah.
are you? So you were thinking about going out and being an artist, a missionary, but you're not thinking animation at this time, right?
No.
You're just thinking about art.
Right, exactly. And I had a strip in the paper, in my local town paper in high school, um, which was a bit controversial, but anyway, but it also dealt with faith, and it was about the supreme God. This was what the strip was about. Was named Chuck, just a guy who wore a ball cap,
Oh
and
my
he
gosh!
and I was thinking, what if just some guy happened to be the ruler and he ruled the pantheon, the Greek gods, and all this. And
Oh wow,
anyways, it got complicated, but anyway,
man, this is before I've met you, and you're already a deep thinker as a teenager. Like this
well,
is this this is I can see the foundation blocks already, like
I
what you're
had a lot of
describing.
time on my hands.
Well, as a rancher, sometimes you don't. So
That's
that's why
true.
I did, that's
That's
a
very
tough
true.
balance. So I don't know. So what were you pursuing animation at all at this point?
No, in fact, I was really interested in painting and drawing. I was interested in story, very interested in story. And I got a scholarship. I don't know how it happened. I'd been rejected from the University of Wyoming, and I'd come from state. We have a state art show, and so I'd come back. I was on the bus, and I was like, I was crushed because I knew that God had called me to do this, and I
Mm,
said, okay, maybe it's me, God. If you want me to use my art for missions for you, make a door open for me.
yeah.
And so I came back from that trip. I was crushed. They had three scholarships, and my family couldn't afford to send me. So they had three
Wow.
scholarships, and I was number four. So I just missed, you know,
Wow.
and it's like, oh man, what am I gonna
Mm.
do? And so uh I could imagine because I was working in the mines at the time.
Oh my
We have
gosh.
Trona mines, so I was a mile under, and I was like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I couldn't imagine myself being there like 40 years and not being able to draw and create. Anyway, so I get home and my mom is waiting at the door and she's crying, and she has a letter from Otis Parsons in Los Angeles, and they had
Mm.
offered me a full ride scholarship to go to Otis Parsons. And so that fall, after I graduated, I went to Los Angeles and started there, and I'm glad I did because they had a really at CalArts, as you know, they don't have a strong foundation program.
Right.
So, it was just like drawing, oil painting, all these
That's
things, getting the
fantastic.
base.
Yeah. So you went right from high school, you went to LA.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you went to LA. When you say a full scholarship, that's including housing?
Yes, the only thing it didn't include was my food and art supplies. And so I worked, I cleaned hotel rooms, I did whatever. I painted T-shirts like it. So I did 3 films at CalArts for my bachelor's program, and one was called Work Ethic, one was called The
That's the
Grateful
one.
Tiger, and one was called F, which was short for Frankenstein, basically. And it was about the Korean American experience. And Otis Parsons at that time was in Koreatown, and so I, of course, had never been exposed to any culture outside of Wyoming, and so suddenly I was making friends with uh, all these Korean students, and then I started working, and I began living with a Korean family because the Korean students, they would rent rooms from Korean families.
Mm,
So I rented a room from a pastor and his wife, of all things. There's just, all these have stories, but
I know,
um,
I'm sure. Probably
but then
deep
I worked
stories
in
too.
a Korean, like I said, Korean sweatshop. He had put an advertisement, the pastor, because he was afraid I wasn't gonna be able to pay rent, I guess. I don't
Oh
know,
my
because I'm an
gosh.
artist. But he put an ad said in the paper, a Korean paper, that said experienced English teacher, apply here. And so one day these students just show up at my door, and they said, okay, we're ready. This is before the internet and all that, but and so I was like, okay. And I said, are you experienced? I said, well, I've spoken English before. And they said, that's perfect. We just want an opportunity just to practice conversation. So I
Oh
did
my
that.
gosh.
Yeah.
Again, it's just a classic Todd story. I love it. So these films, but then wasn't there another film that won an award that was a student
That was
film?
my master's thesis.
Okay. All right. So let me try and get this timeline right. So you're at Disney. We're at CalArts. I left around the same time you did, which was 93. But
Right.
then you got a job in the industry
Right.
before you go back to CalArts, right?
That's
So
right.
was
Yeah.
this what was the first job? Was it with Chuck?
Well, I had a couple. I had an internship with Fox at that time, and we were doing interstitials. And so the summer gig was they would have the 5 approved interstitials is what we were supposed to be doing. We didn't know that so we were doing dozens because they never approved anything, right?
Yeah,
So we would just
exactly.
keep producing stuff. But my big break actually came during my, I think it was my second or third year. That Buena Vista had a contest there was a show called Home Improvement, and so they had this contest
I
about
remember this.
animated bumpers
Yep.
for the show, and I said, well, I'll try that. And they selected one of mine, and so I animated it, and I did the whole thing, shot it, and then they said, do you want to make more? And so I did, and so I kept doing that, and then I was hired at a place called Simity Art to do TV commercials. So I was an assistant animator, cleanup, and then it moved into design and directing. I was up at Colossal Pictures for a bit. This is
Yep.
all during
Colossal.
during school. Um,
Wow.
and
How
then,
did, well, go ahead. I got questions on that, but go ahead.
well, I was poor, but it, we didn't have to. At that time, you were getting hired before you could even graduate.
Right.
Really, I mean, most
Yeah.
of the people. And my parents basically said, no, you got to stay in school. And I had a scholarship, so I went back after my first semester. Talked to Bob Winquist, the head of the
Yeah,
program. I
Bob.
said, Bob, here's my finished student film for the first year. I don't have money to come back, and then and again it was one of those prayers, God, if you want me to stay,
Hmm.
make a way. And then I don't know if it was Bob, it was some anonymous source. He did this for a lot of us.
Me
I
too.
show
Yeah.
Yeah, I show up,
Yeah.
and there's a scholarship waiting for so I
Yeah.
was covered for the next three
Yeah.
years, and I was like,
Amazing.
that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Bob's an incredible person, and I know we've talked about this in the past because I had a similar situation happen, and I was just talking to Tom Bancroft the other day about this, and he said, yeah, he goes, Bob kind of had a history of doing those secret, secret
Yeah,
drops of
amazing.
scholarships. Just an incredible guy, incredible guy.
Yeah,
So, we were there, and there was this amazing support structure that we had with our colleagues, and some phenomenal people that are still in the
oh,
industry today.
incredible.
Just incredible.
Yeah.
um, who moved over with you to Fox when you went? Like I had we had little groups that went with us to different internships. Like, was it who went over with you to Fox, or was it just you coming
It,
from CalArts?
it, let's see, there was Ian Finley and Mark Oftedal. The
Mark.
three of
Yep.
us were over there. And then Mark, of course, went up to he was on this. Then he got hired at The Simpsons, and then he went up to Pixar for many
Right.
years.
Right.
And
Yeah. In the very at the very beginning before
that's
Toy
right.
Story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember when they came in and they were doing some recruiting, and we didn't even know what it was for. Um,
yeah.
that's pretty awesome. So now somewhere in between here, and this is the area that's always been a little gray with me.
Okay.
How do you wind up working with the amazing giant Chuck Jones? We're gonna get into Maurice Noble, but where because this happens somewhere in between here, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'm up. So so I was working at Fox that first summer. I moved up to San Francisco. I got a job offer from Colossal Pictures. So I
While
was
you're still in
helping.
school.
I just graduated.
Okay, so you're
So
out with
the
your master's.
so I was working on these other things that like the TV commercials and stuff while in school in Los Angeles with Simity Art, and then I moved up to San Francisco to work at Colossal. I was only there a couple months before Chuck. Uh, they were having open, so I went down to Los Angeles and went in and showed my portfolio, and I got to meet Maurice. And first, I didn't know who Maurice.
Amazing.
I knew who Maurice was, but I didn't recognize him. So I go into the studio, and there's this kind of funny old guy. He goes, and I walk in. He goes, "I'll be with you in a minute. I'm going to go around the corner and shake hands with an old friend." And then I was like, "Who is this weird guy?" And then he comes
And
back as Maurice, and it's like,
oh
"Oh,
my gosh. Oh my gosh. So, and just for anybody that doesn't know, Maurice Noble, total giant in the animation industry. Chuck Jones, giant in the animation industry. These guys this is around 2000-ish, somewhere there around 90s, late 90s, right? Or
oh."
mid 90s.
When I was at Chuck Jones,
Yeah, when you first met Maurice.
oh, I was there from late '93 to like '96. Yeah,
Okay, so and these guys are seniors, right? I mean, how
yeah,
old is
they're in their
Maurice at this point?
80s,
They're
like
in their
early
80s.
80s at that time. Yeah,
But there's this little bit of a resurgence that's going on,
right.
right? So they're coming out
And they
of who knows.
Warner Brothers dusted them off, and
Yeah, and these guys are in their 80s, and they're like, "Hey, we're getting back to work." So now, are they doing their own studio? Like, where were they working out of?
so we were just off the Warner Brothers lot. There was this a building that Chuck had rented he'd rented a whole floor basically, and so we
And
had
Chuck's in his 80s at this point, right?
yes, that's right. Yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah, and yeah, it's incredible. And this is when the cell business, like cells, were really popular. But because Warner Brothers had destroyed most of the original cells, Chuck had this idea of like, why don't we make more cartoons? And his daughter Linda Jones was the head of the cell company, and we could make these old-fashioned films, using the classic characters, and so I didn't appreciate it at the time. I just thought, oh, this is how everything is. But we were working with Frank Gorshin would come in. He was doing the Daffy Duck voice. We'd have Debbie Reynolds came in one day. Um, just Quentin Tarantino popped in one
Oh
day,
my
and he
gosh.
says we were all in the bullpen drawing. He goes, "Hi everyone, I'm Quentin." And we were, yeah, we know. This is when he was going to the Oscars with Chuck. Um, that was
Wow.
his Pulp Fiction had been nominated or
Yep.
something,
Yep.
but
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, and
yeah.
Reservoir Dogs
So
was really out.
it was incredible. Just the people coming in, and a lot of the Disney animators would come in, and that's how
Sure.
I got to know like Eric Goldberg and all those guys. And Um,
Fantastic.
I just took it for granted, really.
Well, and we talk about that a lot. I'm kind of a broken record where many times, and I always share this, especially for younger people, whenever I do a talk at schools or institutions, it's really hard to appreciate when you're in a special moment,
Yep.
especially when you're young, because
Right.
you're hungry and you're trying to be a sponge, but you're at a historic time, and sometimes you're around true giants that you take for granted. It's like, my goodness, I'm working with Chuck Jones and Maurice Noble. It's like,
Right.
that's phenomenal. When these guys should have retired 25 years ago.
That's right. And they
It's
had. They
Yeah,
both.
and they had, but they're still great. They're still
Yep.
phenomenal artists.
Yep.
So yeah,
Exactly.
that's just man, it's incredible. We could talk about this for a long time, but I still have a couple of questions. So
Okay. Sure.
you're there for a while. You're
Hmm.
dipping in and out, it sounds like,
Yeah.
with them, right? So you're around Maurice a lot. You're around
Right.
Chuck a lot. Obviously, we want to talk about apprenticeships or mentoring. Uh, uh, they're bestowing this insane amount of knowledge to you
Yeah.
just by oozing it out, probably.
Yeah.
So you're building a relationship with them, right?
Hmm.
And now, what are you absorbing from Maurice? Are you absorbing his phenomenal color philosophy, his design language? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, it's interesting. The thing I learned most from Maurice is how to see the world in my own way. The first week I was up there, I had his artwork pinned up in my little space in my drawing area. He came in and he was so angry and he ripped it off the wall. He goes, "What does this have to do with the film you're working on now?" And I was like, "But I love this work." He goes, "Yes, but this is what I did. I want to see what you would do." And um, so we started from scratch, and then that's how. And he hired me for color design, and I didn't have any color in my portfolio at all. All my films were black and
Wow.
white. But I had been referencing woodblock artists from the 1920s and 30s, like Rockwell Kent and Lynn
Hmm.
Ward and those guys. And he recognized it because he'd had the same passion as a young man. And so he said, "Oh, did you reference Rockwell Kent here?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "You're hired for color." And I was like, "Whoop, this guy's a
Wow.
little funny in the head, but
Now
if
he
he's
could
giving me a
see.
job, hey, who am I to complain?" So
That's awesome. So how many
yeah.
years how many years were you working with him on and off?
With Chuck, it was like 2.5, 3 years, something like that.
And with
Um,
Maurice?
and with Maurice, it was longer because we had formed a company together with Don Hall called Noble Tales. So we were trying to pitch a series of folk tales, and it started from his mentorship. So one of the first assignments we got at Chuck Jones was to look at a culture outside of our own, analyze their color language,
Wow.
analyze their shape language, and so he went even beyond that. So he says, "Okay, we're going to Indonesia." So we went to Indonesia to Jakarta and Yogyakarta, and we were studying with a master puppet. In fact, that's what some of this stuff is back
That's
here.
amazing. So you're telling me you and Don Hall, Don was, I think he was like right behind me, but you guys are going to Indonesia with
Well,
Maurice
I
Noble?
was the only one that went. Don was at Disney by this point, I think.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, and so we went to Turkey, we went to Indonesia, we stayed with some of the royal family in Cambodia, in Thailand. His uncle had been a missionary in Thailand in 1905. He'd set up a
Maurice's uncle?
yes, so
Oh
he'd
my
set up
gosh.
a hospital there, a leper colony, and so we went to the leper colony, and Maurice had always wanted to live in Thailand, and so
Wow.
I had been, well, this is getting a little ahead of myself, but I'd been hired as a overseas supervisor, and so
I'm going
I
to touch on
landed in
that.
Asia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so anyway, we were invited to come over and make a film there, Maurice and I,
An
and
animated film in
in Thailand.
Thailand.
Yeah,
Wow.
and so we were getting ready to go, and then he unfortunately he passed
Hmm.
away just before we were going to leave, and
Wow. How old was Maurice when he passed? Do you remember?
91.
91. Wow, that's incredible. So, so obviously you're spending all this time with him. You're absorbing an incredible amount of information. You form this company. Obviously, some changes occur. Um, uh, at what point were you thinking to honor him with this most incredible book, which I cherish? Um, you wrote this incredible book,
Yeah.
The Noble Approach. Phenomenal, beautiful book, gorgeous.
Thank you.
Chuck Jones did I think he did the foreword, right, or the
Yeah.
preface or something.
hmm
Um, at what point were you doing that? Were you doing that while you were at the studio, or how did
He
that
had
come
been
about?
working on it for many years, so he had put notes together. And when we were at the studio, and there were a bunch of us in the beginning that he was training in, and slowly, it culled down to, people left for jobs. And anyway, I was the
Hmm.
last man standing, kind of. And uh, had been putting these notes together, but because he'd had macular degeneration, so he could barely
Mm,
see. And so I would put the notes together, and he would write notes for me and the others, and I collected those. And he wanted a Preston Blair book, but
mm,
about design, about just in a simple way how to approach a film with design, because he felt like at that time especially no one had ever talked about that. And so before he passed away, he asked me, he says, "Look, if anything happens to me, would you make sure to do two things? The first thing is to finish this book, and the second was the film we were working on. So the Pumpkin of Nifar was the
wow.
and so I said, "Oh, sure, Maurice." But he'd promised to live to be 100, and I believed him. So I said, "We got plenty of time. You got this."
Right.
So
Oh
and then
my
he
gosh.
passed away the next year. So
Oh my gosh. Well, see, I didn't know that part of the story. I always wanted to ask about that, and thankfully, our profession does seem to have some people living to 100.
yeah, yeah, they
So,
do.
so I hope we're in that camp. But
Yeah,
that's amazing. So basically, you felt you had to finish this, so you compiled it. He had a bunch of his notes and artwork there, and it's a beautiful book. I don't think it's in print anymore, so it makes it more
no,
rare, and it's probably pretty pricey right now. But
yeah, it is. The
maybe.
Kindle is still out there,
Okay,
and
good. Okay, so hopefully people can get it because it is pretty amazing. So that's a big, we talk about adversity, we talk about challenges. This sounds like it's kind of an uncertain time period. Maurice passes. You have a
yeah,
company with Maurice. You've got these projects that you're trying to get going. People have moved to other studios, but you're already in this independent studio mindset at this point.
right.
So, are you thinking, "Hey, I finally made it," or are you thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm starting over"? Like, what are you
I
thinking?
I felt really lost because, for a long time, Maurice had been sort of my guiding light as far as what we were going to, the whole Noble Tale. It was our idea, but he was really the catalyst. And he said, these are the types.
Hmm.
The thing is he'd been in the industry so long with this heart to do independent film, but
Yeah,
he had this dream of making his own films all along, but he had never done it. And so when he met us, he goes, "Okay, here's my chance to
yeah,
teach, but also to create something special." And so it was just a bit late,
yeah,
when he was finally
yeah,
starting to go forward with that.
yeah.
So
Well, you're touching on something that came up a couple of weeks ago. I was at an event and I organized an animation dinner, and a bunch of our colleagues happened to be in town at the same time, and people and they're pretty well-known people.
right,
And one of the topics that everybody got into, and it's probably because we're all in the similar age group, is that how how do I find time to do some of our own projects? How do I find a way to fund my own film? Like, time's going by. We're not
right,
promised tomorrow.
yeah.
How do we do that? So, was Maurice funding these projects himself, or?
No, well, a little bit because so I was his assistant for quite a few years. So he would get jobs from different studios and different people, and I would be his assistant, but he wasn't paying me. So in lieu of payment, he was like teaching me basically. I was like,
Mm,
and
yep.
giving me. And so the reason I went back and got my master's was one to work with Jules Engel,
Yes.
but it was the only way I could think about getting a low interest loan that would give me enough time to actually finish a film. And
Right.
so I had worked anyway. So I'd worked with on this film, and it's like, okay, it's obvious I'm not going to be able to do this in California, especially, with. So I was bouncing back overseas in my design work in California. And then, so Jules was nice. He said, okay, you can go to school a semester, get off work a semester, come back. And so I was
That's
able to
fantastic.
keep myself going that way. And then
That's great.
I had I hired a bunch of my friends in the Philippines because I was supervising there. So they helped with my ink and paint. And so I outsourced my student film. But
I love it. I love it.
but
That's awesome.
I was just like, that's the only way I could
I get it,
do
brother.
it.
I
Yeah.
I get it. So how did that come about? The fact that you're supervising in the Philippines, like how did that? Was it because of the trip to Thailand? Like how did that? How did
No.
you get to that?
Well, I was working at a place called Hyperion. So we
Oh
were
yeah.
working on a series called Happily Ever After,
Yep, I remember.
um, with Ed Bell was directing and uh, J- Smith, no, not Jim Smith, Bruce Smith. Sorry, Bruce Smith it originated. It was his thing, and then he went back
Yep.
to Disney, and so Ed Bell took anyway that he hired me to help with layout design and background design to be sent overseas, and our overseas studio at the time was in the Philippines. And so the overseas supervisor had gotten sick and
Hmm.
wasn't able to go. I can't remember exactly what the circumstances was, but I was the only one on staff that had actually directed stuff. So I had been directing some commercials. I directed the home improvement things, and from the home improvement thing, I got some Sesame Street, like the letter O and the letter U. I think I directed a couple of those.
I
So I was
love
the
it.
only one that had done any directing. He said, "Could you go over for a couple months?" And I said, "Okay, sure." And so I went over to the Philippines, and I was way out of my depth there. I was like 23 or 24 at the time.
Wow. And you're
And
supervising in the
yeah,
Philippines.
but when the stuff was coming, and I became really good friends with all and we just hit it off over
I
there.
bet. I bet.
And so the the stuff came back and it was a lot better than what had been done before. And so they said, "Do you mind staying there?" And I was
Yep.
like,
Yep.
"Okay." So I went back and forth for a few years to the Philippines, and working with Phil Cartoons and Passe is it's no longer, and then Top
Yep.
Drawer.
Was that Phil Roman's group, Phil Cartoons, or somebody else?
No, Phil Cartoons was um, oh gosh, I can't
Well,
think.
that's okay. I just immediately I thought of Phil Roman for some reason. I don't
No,
know why.
no, it's separate. Yeah.
Wow. Well, here you are. You're doing a bunch of work in the Philippines. You're making a way through all this. I want to get into what winds up bringing you back to the States on a pretty full throttle way, and I also want to talk about how do you get to Cartoon Saloon and work with Tom Moore. So
Right.
we're just going to take a brief break here,
Okay.
if you bear with me, just
Sure.
1 minute, and we'll be right back. Celebrate the animated story of My Neighbor with both the release of the children's book and the coloring and activity book. Both are available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, as well as Premise Press. The children's book comes with a free Flip-Its activity, a flip book where our characters come to life. It also includes a parent's guide with wonderful themes for the whole family. All right. Welcome back to Artist Lunchbox with my dear friend Tod Polson, just taking us on an incredible journey, his journey, working with giants in the industry and also his incredible indie animation path. So, where we left off, you're working over in the Philippines. You're going back and forth overseas. You're overseeing
Right.
all these different projects. Um, uh, when did you feel that you were going to really share what your stylization or your artistic voice was? Was there a project that suddenly it's like, hey, you're not supervising as much as we need color styling again,
Right.
or we
Right.
need art direction? What was there a project around this time that caused
Well,
that or
yeah, I was always working on things like that. So, Jorge Gutierrez was starting out with some of his web stuff way back at Sony
is that
before.
that not El Tigre? Is that
No, this is way before LT Gray.
okay?
Yeah, so because we were studying under Jules together. That's how I got to meet Jorge at CalArts.
So you guys were both there in the experimental.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so we got to. yeah, I got to know Jorge and a lot of really talented people like Chen Yi Chang was there, and just
Oh
like
yeah.
lots of amazing. Like thinking back, it's incredible. But
I know that the name drop that can be done is crazy, and that's why I say it was a very special time,
it was.
very
Yeah.
special time, and yeah, I don't take it for granted, and that's amazing. So you have been working with Jorge on some of these projects, so you've knew him a long time.
Mhm.
Was that how you got like when did Book of Life occur and all those things, or was it LT
Well,
Gray
that
first?
was much later. Yeah. So, and I didn't work on some of his Sony stuff. I would just sort of like consult and we'd talk about stuff and I would sleep on his couch for weeks at a time. You know, just because I was poor, I was like,
I get it.
I put every penny I made was going into my films.
You are such an
And
artist. I love it.
Um, but so when we made the Pumpkin and Knife Art, we made Maurice's film over
Yeah.
in Thailand, and I was asked to help develop a feature there, so I was directing a feature in Thailand and Bangkok. So was 6 months eventually turned into 20 some years, but um,
Wow.
and I in the Thai studio was owned by James Wong, who owned Cuckoo's Nest, Wong
Mm.
Film in Taipei, and I'd worked a lot with him on a job called Poochini, which
Oh
was
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So what was that?
So
Was that a short film? What was that?
now it was a series. So it started out uh, David Marshall, and just yeah. Uh, Gosh, I'm blanking here. Sorry.
Did no worries. Did you have any language barrier, or do you
Oh,
speak
at
the
Thai?
language?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, when I first moved to Thailand, it was terrible. And I ended up in Thailand because poor James, we were producing things in Taiwan, and that was where the A
Yeah,
crew
that was a
was.
big spot for animation back then.
And
Huge.
so we asked, I said, James, you're making it a Taiwan film, right? And he said, yes, Taiwan. He was he was saying instead of Taiwan, we thought it was going to be made in Taiwan. I'm telling the story bad. Anyway, we thought he was saying Taiwan. He meant Taiwan, which is his studio in Thailand.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so we were having some problems with the show, some of the backgrounds or something. And I show up in Taiwan unannounced. And he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm here to help with the
Oh
perfect."
my
He goes,
gosh.
"I told you, it's at Taiwan." And so the next day I flew to Thailand to Taiwan Film Studio and got to meet a lot of anyway, that's how I got involved and I became really good friends with James over the years and with the manager of the studio in Thailand, and they're the ones that invited Maurice and I over originally.
Wow.
So I was there for a long time, and then uh again, it was a one of those fluke things where animation workshop, my good friend Lawrence Marvitt was teaching in Denmark at the animation workshop, and
Hmm.
one of the instructors had gotten sick, and so they again invited me to go over, and so I flew over to Denmark. I taught a class. We got on really well, and so they invited me back to help supervise the third year films. Uh, and then I so I'd be there like 2 or 3 months a year
So
in
so
Denmark.
what time period was this? What like 2000?
Yeah,
What was
2005 to
okay.
2005 to 2000. Well, I my last time there was 2021 is when the last time I taught there.
Okay. So you're
Um,
dipping in and out in Europe. So
right.
you're not in the Philippines anymore. You're not going
No.
back over there.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm based in
uh,
Thailand, but yeah. Hmm.
right. So you kept a residence in Thailand?
Yes. Hmm.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh my gosh.
And when I just one year, like my second year, so we'd entered the pumpkin film into the Kilkenny Film
Hmm.
Festival. So Cartoon Saloon
Sure.
was having their first film festival, uh, and we won. And so we got to know them that way. But I saw this advertisement, and it's like head wanted in Ireland, apply. And so I happened to be in Denmark at that time, so I flew down to Ireland, spent a weekend with Tom Moore and Ross
Did you
Stewart.
know him? You knew him from the
No.
festival or
Well, so yeah, it's kind of I didn't know him at that time. Yeah.
okay.
They knew my film, they knew some of my work, but they didn't know me as a person. And so I took the test. I said, okay, you're hired. So I was going to move to Ireland, and then that's how I got involved with the Secret of Kells. Um, and they had never. The Secret of Kells was their college project, and so they'd been working on it.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
they had just gotten a little bit of money from the government just to kind of do some stuff on it. And we were working in an old orphanage. And so every once in a while, people would wander off the street that had been orphans there like 50 years before. And they go, oh, I remember when I was chained to that wall
Oh
over
my
there.
gosh.
And this one woman said, oh, they didn't tell you about all the dead babies in the field, did they? And I was like,
Oh my
whoa.
gosh.
There's just like all this weird stuff. And we had no heat. It was so cold in there. So we would straddle our computers, and the harder we worked, the warmer they would get. And so, but it was, we were all young. It was super
Yeah.
fun. And we
So
were making some,
what
yeah,
time period was this when you went?
2006.
Okay,
Yeah,
so 2006, it's their college project, but now it's picking up some speed.
yeah,
You get
right.
hired, you take a test, you get hired on.
Right.
It's a small team. I'm sure it's a very
Yes,
small
very
team.
small. Yeah,
They're in this building, but they're getting some type of public funding or
that's right.
grants or the way the European system works.
That's right.
So they're doing it. That was paperless though, right? Were you guys paperless or
Those on
no?
paper. Yeah.
You guys were on paper, okay,
Yeah.
but it wasn't obviously it wasn't cells. You're doing ink and
No, I don't think so. Yeah, it
so
was, but the backgrounds were painted. A lot of them were painted by hand, and then there was a lot of blend where we'd paint elements and put it in there
right,
together and stuff. But I was mostly working on the color script um,
which is
at that
gorgeous,
point because
absolutely
oh,
gorgeous. Yeah,
thanks. Yeah,
yeah,
it, it, and they had this. The thing is when I saw what they were doing, there was this like instant connection. It was like they were so interested in folklore and folk art and all these things that I was so passionate
yeah,
about. And so it was just like they liked my work, I liked their work. There was a
yeah,
lot of commonality. The some of the shape language was very
yeah.
similar. And so we really worked well together and became, really close friends very quickly. And then
Makes sense.
yeah, anyway, so I was bouncing in and out of a saloon to helping, and eventually I got to a point where we were coming back to the States to live, and I wasn't exactly sure where to go because I'd been kind of let go from my job in
Mm,
Thailand. I'd been
mm,
developing a film, and that was done, and it was just like I had gotten married. We were having a baby, and it's like, what's next
right.
for us, my
Was that
wife
in
and I?
Europe? Was that in
No,
Europe
this is
or
in Thailand. Yeah.
that was in Thailand? That's
I know it's
amazing.
confusing. The timeline's confusing,
Well,
but
that's why I'm trying to piece it all
so
together. But before you move on though, the cartoon saloon connection
yes.
really makes a lot of sense when just telling me some of the pieces that I didn't know about you, but everything from we'll get into the iconography, the culture, the experimental approach to the anime. Like you could totally see, knowing you and knowing the beautiful work that they were doing. I mean, it really was a marriage. You could
Yeah,
totally
it
tell
was
why you guys
amazing.
would hit it off,
It was
and
amazing.
for years, right? So you would go
Right.
back and forth, but
Yes, right.
now you have a family, and you're trying to figure out what's the next chapter because you're
This
leaving
was
Europe or
Yeah, well, I was still based in Thailand. So
right.
I had, I had lived for short bursts in Ireland, but I was never there for like years and years at a time. So it was always like I'd be there for some months and then I'd go back to Thailand and I'd come back for something else. And then at the same time, I was helping Jorge with El Tigre. This was 2006. What had happened with the Saloon, I was supposed to be there for the whole film and supervise the background. There was a French co-producer that
Mm.
so we I and I, anyway, communication is very important,
Yeah. Yes.
and it's not my strength. So what had happened is they brought in French producers who hadn't agreed or known what my agreement was with Cartoon
Hmm.
Saloon itself, and so there was this whole thing where they felt like they really wanted a French artist to be in that kind of supervisor position. Why are we hiring this American that
Mm.
doesn't get tax breaks, doesn't get all these things? we need
Yeah.
to get, so when my first paycheck came, it was for a lot less than what I had been promised.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that that was coming from the French side. I was like, well, guys,
Hmm.
I can't do this, you know.
Yeah.
And so I left, and I was still helping them, you know, off and on as a freelancer. But you know, at that point, I left Secret of Kells, and this was about 2006. Jorge hired me, and so he bless his heart. So
Now
I
this is
was
back to LA though, right? Now you're going back to LA for
no,
Jorge, or you working remotely?
no. Jorge was amazing in that because remote positions didn't exist in 2006,
Right.
2007. Everyone was in studio, but and at Nickelodeon, they didn't have someone that just did color scripting. You know, that was always the art director. So
Hmm.
Roman Laney was the art director that he brought on, and he wanted me to do the color scripts
Mm.
with Dave Thomas. And Dave Thomas was the director of the Poochini.
Mm.
He's an amazing artist and director. Anyway, so Jorge, bless his heart, he trusted me, and so he convinced Nickelodeon to hire me as a remote artist doing color scripts, which is
Mm.
like some talking some foreign alien
Amazing.
language to
Yeah.
these people. And
Yeah.
so I was able to live in like 6 countries doing the color scripts for
Fantastic.
for El Tigre, and it was like I think he got nervous sometimes, but I always delivered, and they always liked the stuff, and
Of
so
course.
after that, then of course when he got the feature, then I had naturally wanted to be part of that, but this time in person
Right.
and to work with
And
him, and that's how I came to Dallas originally. Yeah,
right, and that's Book of Life.
Book of Life. Yeah,
Yep.
and
So
that was
Book of Life.
2013 when I was here.
Yeah. So what studio was behind? But I went there when they were working on it. I was at Disney, but I was visiting,
Right,
and I had seen the
real effects.
studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had visit when they were there because now I think they're mostly up in Canada, but they still have a base there. But um, what what studio? So that was gonna be Real Effects' own production, right? Is that right? Or
Yes, with I forget, it was Paramount, the distributor. I forget who the
okay.
distributor was, but yeah,
Well,
Paramount. Yeah.
you guys punched way above your weight on that show. It was just beautiful, really, really gorgeous, and
It
yeah, it
was
still stands out as really
incredible.
beautiful,
That was
beautiful work.
Jorge. I mean, Jorge, his story, his aesthetic, he was doing things that, you know, you didn't, now you see it all the time, but he was doing
Sure.
a lot of graphic things and story things that at the time were pretty novel, I
Yeah.
think. So,
So
and that it's so distinctly Mexican. So,
yeah, it's true. He's got such a style. It's
yeah.
beautiful. So I don't know where this falls, but I always wanted to ask you. There was a film that you did. It was your own film. The Gingerbread
Oh, the
Escape.
Escape of the Gingerbread Man. Yeah.
Escape of the Gingerbread. What year was that?
So I started it at a studio called The Monk in Bangkok. So I had tried to escape. I'd gone, you know, I'd done Nickelodeon stuff. I had worked for a while in Beijing at a company, and I'd gotten them a feature, and then they decided not to pay me once they got the anyway. Lots of stories, lots of horror
Those are
stories,
the
lots of stuff.
scars. And you know what? And we do talk about a lot of that stuff here because again, triumph only comes because of adversity. So,
Yes.
you know, we know about these things and yeah. So
So
so go ahead.
so Tom Moore came to me. He said, "Look, I think Kells Secret of Kells is going to be short. Would you mind making a short film like The Pumpkin of Nightfar that we love so much that we could put in front of our film?" And I said, I'll try. And so I got the Monk Studio, and I had been working with a Irish storyteller named Eddie Linehan, and I had brought him over to Denmark to teach some story classes, and so he's an amazing storyteller. Look him up, Eddie Linehan,
Yeah,
and
all right, down.
he's spent most of his life collecting these old oral stories from mostly the west coast of Ireland, and then putting them down, and you know, learning the craft of storytelling. And so the students were there, you know, none of them had story experience, and then he would like become another creature when he would be telling these
Yeah.
stories, and the students were like, you know, reacting to all this
And a
stuff.
great voice. The voice
And
was
just
amazing.
incredible. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, that was John Kinney that did the voice. Yeah, he's gone now too, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
he and
stuff.
his band did the music as well for that. But
So that film was funded and backed by Cartoon Saloon?
no, so yeah, they didn't have the money to do that. But I got a grant from the Danish Film Fund, and so they
Amazing.
were able to help with that. And then Juck at Somsaman at the Monk Studio, he donated a lot of his time because he saw it as a
Wow.
training project. So he was able to train his people in animation basically on my film, and that's what paid it off for him. Yeah.
And now that um was that the first time that you're directing your own independent film?
Uh, no,
Outside of the student films, obviously.
well, we had the Pumpkin of Nightfire, and I'd
Okay.
done, like my own personal film. Yeah, probably it was the first one, but it was my first 3D thing ever,
S-
basically.
So that's one of the things I want to talk to you about because it was kind of a mixed media, but was it a big change, the fact that now you're leading this project and you had probably a few people on it, right? You had quite a
Yeah,
few.
yeah, we had quite a few.
So did you have some challenges in terms of delivering it on time or
No.
trying to get it through or
Well, it just took a long time because it was a volunteer project basically. So the studio would work on it whenever they had downtime, which, fortunately at the time they thought they'd have a lot of, but then it ended up that they were flush. They had all kinds of work. So,
but you stuck it
but
out,
yeah, but I've been directing like TV episodes. I've been directing
right?
commercials. So for me, it was easier in a way because I could finally do what I wanted to.
Yeah.
And it
Uh,
was a big experiment for me. And I was trying to teach the 3D animators in Thailand a lot of the timing things that Chuck had
mhm.
taught me. For example, like timing to the metronome and
Yeah,
all those things. And so it
that's
was it
awesome.
was a great learning experience for me. And you know, there's experiments that worked and experiments that didn't work. Uh,
Well, again, there you are doing experimental stuff. I
right.
mean, this is, look. I'm hearing this repeat over and over through your career. And even though you're deep into the commercial space of animation, you keep on being in this really, indie kind of experimental space.
Right.
Um, uh, with going back and forth like that, is there is there any type of your mindset you're shifting? Did you ever have a challenge in terms of this is my indie approach versus here's my commercial
Mm.
pipeline situation I've got to deal with? Like, did you ever
Yeah.
any challenges switching those
You
gears?
just you just had to be a lot more creative with your own stuff, I think, because I never knew how I was going to finish the films ever. Like I'd start a film. We did a one later with James Wong in Indonesia called The Prodigal, and that film, my students from Denmark came over and helped with the pre-production. We did all this
Hmm.
stuff, and I had this full, and I was like, yeah, right. I actually have to animate this thing now.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
it's like, how am I going to do it? So it was like, this was the first, because I'd left Cartoon Saloon. They had hired me as a creative director to help develop mostly their television projects and help develop their interns, basically.
Hmm.
But I still had that calling of missions work, and
Yeah.
my marriage was having some problems, so we
Hmm.
decided to move back to Thailand, and I could focus more on my own things. It's like I'm 45 years older. I can't remember how old I was, but it's like if I don't do it now, I'm never going to get the chance. So
Yeah.
I took that step of faith. I left my dream studio, um, Cartoon Saloon,
Amazing.
and so I said, well, God, if this is really from you, make a way. And so that's what happened. And when we finished the pre-production on The Prodigal, and I was like, okay, God, how are we going to make this? And I was really
Hmm.
worried about it because it's like we put a lot of work into it.
Hmm.
3 days later, exactly, James
Mm.
Wong called me up and he said, look, I have this new studio in Indonesia. Do you have a short film we can work on?
Come on.
And I was like, are you kidding me? And I said, yes, I do.
I
And
just happened to.
so he says, because our people are really experienced, but we don't have anything from our studio because we're brand new. So we just want to show people what we can do. And so I went down, we finished it in about 2 months.
Amazing.
And
So, so
yeah.
that was around, there was another film in there around that time. Was it The Dragon? Was it the,
Oh, My Father's Dragon. Yeah, so
was
I
that
just had
before Prodigal or after or during or
that
where was,
that was just like at the end, at the beginning of Prodigal. So I was transitioning from my creative director position to uh, doing my own stuff in
so,
Thailand.
so now you want to do your own stuff here and this Prodigal project comes up, which is absolutely beautiful. I'm sure it's on YouTube. If not, we'll put some links because it
Yeah,
is
it is. Yeah.
gorgeous. Um, uh, and you know it's a modern telling of the prodigal son, obviously, but it's very, very powerful. One of the things that I wanted to ask about that was the time period, because you started making it, and then you get this incredible blessing that suddenly it's like coincidence, right?
Right.
3 days later, hey, I need a short film.
Right.
That's pre-COVID though, right? Or is it
Yes.
around?
Yeah.
So
So we finished it in like 2018, early 19.
And then what was the distribution model for that? Like what was the plan? Where did it go out?
We So my partner Brett Bosch, so we had hoped to do all the parables. Um, our company is called 37 Stories. It's at 37stories.com, and we
And
have it
is do you
in.
still have 37stories.com?
Yes,
Awesome.
yes. And so we have the Prodigal in about 60 some languages, I think,
That's amazing.
dubs. And our hope is still to get it off the ground. Then COVID happened and all this, and
Right.
then just at the beginning of COVID, I was offered this film called The 21. Um,
Well, we're gonna get there.
okay,
That's a big, big one. That's huge. And I hope we have enough time for this because that's the
sure.
main place where I want to go to. I'm curious about the prodigal because when I first saw it, it just blew me away. Um, uh, so now you're getting it dubbed. Is that through sponsorships, donors? How are you getting the dubs done?
Usually, yeah, it's because we're just giving it away basically
Right,
as our model, which, we're a nonprofit, and
right.
so we usually, if someone's interested,
They'll do
they'll
the
help
dub.
us. Yeah, they'll help us with the dub, and we
That makes
approve that.
sense.
I'm doing the same thing with The 21.
That makes
Um,
sense. That makes a lot of
and
sense. So the 21, and anybody that hasn't seen it should definitely see it. It's very powerful. It's based on a very horrific event. However, these these men are faced with the unthinkable. Uh, when you get involved with the 21, what year was that you first got involved in it? Because I want to talk about Light of the World in here as well.
right.
So
So it was a very end of 2019. Um, they Tom Moore had actually recommended me. The producer said, "Look, we don't know what this film's going to be,
well,
but
let me just pause you because there's a little piece there I know that I'm not sure.
okay,
When Tom Moore's recommending you, that's
yes,
because a group is coming to
Cartoon
Cartoon
Saloon.
Saloon
Yeah,
wanting to make this film. Is that
right.
correct?
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a story. They didn't have anything. They said, would you be the production house?" And they said, "Well, this isn't really a Cartoon Saloon type of thing, but we know someone who would love to do this."
If you're a content creator or a filmmaker, writer, artist, or animator, or if you're in a publishing field, or you want to write your first children's book or novel, you want to get your vision made, that could feel very overwhelming. Yet there's never been a better time to make your content. You've got a great idea, but now what? What do you do with it? With 30 years of experience in this industry, from comic books to animation to filmmaking, over the years I've offered a lot of consultation to studios, to individuals, to artists, and I want to offer it directly to you. In just 15, 30 minutes or more, I can help you cut through the noise and advise you on the best avenues for potential distribution. We've seen a lot of change in this industry, and many of us can use some guidance to avoid the potholes, the challenges, and the pitfalls. The goal is to find the best path forward for your project. No guesswork, no fear, just clear, actionable guidance, real world, tailored to your project and your goals. Don't sit on your ideas. Those are yours, and only you can bring them to life. Book a one-on-one consultation directly with me through the Premise Entertainment website under the consulting services or by visiting the QR code on the screen now.
I had left the studio because they knew my calling, they knew that I
Yeah,
wanted to work on this stuff. And they respected that. So he was the one that like of course, Tom was amazing just with his feedback on the story and the visuals and things. And,
fantastic,
just a dear friend, just a great guy. And
fantastic. When they with this project, are they thinking as a animated feature? Are they thinking as a short film? What are they?
they, the original plan was to make a little 3-minute film that in 6 months, and would be. But as we started digging into it, we didn't have a story. It was like Mark Rogers. He had this idea and inspiration, and felt like we needed to make this. He's my producer, and Mandy Hart, and so it's like, wow, we need to research this. So I flew to Egypt. I met the families, and I asked them, what if you were to tell the world and give them a message, and this film had a message, what would you say? And they said, well, we just want to let people know that we let ISIS know that we forgive them,
Mm,
that, you know, we don't want them to burn and die and
mm,
go to hell. We want them to know Christ. We want them to be
mm,
saved. And so that's where the heart of the
amazing.
film came from.
Amazing. And maybe you can just touch on it. And most people know the event, but maybe you can just summarize
Sure.
these families. What is the 21 in, in a brief way?
Sure. So in 2015, actually late 14, um, there were a bunch of construction workers that had been working in Libya. And the war had destroyed, especially they were in a city called Sirte,
Mm,
and the city was just destroyed. And so they were there helping rebuild buildings, helping paint, helping do
mm,
electrician work. And so they were going to be coming home from Christmas, and ISIS was there, and they wanted to make a statement. And so they kidnapped, well, 20 of them. And to make a long story short. And so they captured them. They didn't ask for a ransom. They just wanted to make a statement. And they brought in all this equipment, film equipment, lighting equipment,
mm,
cameras, all this stuff from Turkey and other
mm.
places because they wanted to make a professional production to shock the world,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And so that's what the story started with, and that's what we had as a 5-minute film showing ISIS killing these men.
Mm,
And and the last man was a man from Ghana named Matthew, a black man who we don't know if he was saved or not. We don't know what his
mm.
faith was, but by the end, they were going to let him go. ISIS was, and he said, "No, their God is my God," and he stayed and
Amazing.
died with them. And so,
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing. Well, the film is such a treasure. And I know, I'm sure the families, they're just so honored by it. And the way you guys did it was absolutely beautiful using the iconic imagery. And yeah, it's just, yeah, you should be very proud of yourself. I think it's pretty phenomenal. And man, oh man, is that a tough subject? So, yeah,
it was hard, but it's strange, but it's probably the most personal film I've made in
I
that
believe it.
I I had to go on a personal journey of faith myself
Mm,
just to make this thing and get into the mind
jeez.
space, meeting the families and seeing their faith, seeing how they live their everyday lives,
Yeah.
getting to know their sons and husbands. And everything in the film is from interviews. Nothing is my own, like I'm a
Right.
Christian, but
Right.
I tried to stay neutral in the telling as much as possible. And so
Fantastic.
we interviewed a lot of the people that were there, the cousins and things that were there the night of the kidnappings uh,
Oh.
from ISIS. There were a couple of ISIS guards that gave their testimony. And in fact,
Mm,
the craziest imagery, like angels walking down the shoreline and them seeing these strange things, that came from ISIS itself. So it's
incredible.
like, that blew me away totally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that imagery is incredible. You guys capture it so well, and yeah, the fact that it was just their testimony is just oof, that's gives you the chills. It's pretty incredible. How long was the whole process from concept to delivery?
probably about 5 years. But of
That's a
course,
journey. That's a journey.
this was through COVID. I
Yeah.
went, unfortunately went through a divorce at the same time. It was just
Mm,
there was a lot going on.
yeah.
And we would go in short spurts because it was all crowdfunded. And so we weren't sure at the beginning. We did an Indiegogo. We raised $10,000, but that
Wow.
was enough for me to do some concept work. And then from the concept work, uh, people wanted to volunteer, donors wanted to donate, and so it slowly built up.
Mm,
Um, and
wow.
just we had 70 artists involved with the production, only because a lot of it was volunteer work. And so
Yeah.
friends would go, "I'll do a scene this weekend," and then it would move on to the next artist, and it was like um,
Wow. I-
25 countries. We had
It's
Hindus and
amazing.
Buddhists and Muslims and Christians, all atheists. They were all working on this project because they were united by this story, because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
original story is so powerful.
It captured the globe. It really did. I mean, I'll never forget it. How did you manage all the assets? And you got it, they're coming from 25 countries, and this is paperless.
Yeah,
Because I remember when it was going on, I wanted to try and jump on it. I still
yeah,
kind of kick myself. I couldn't find time for that.
it's
But
okay. Yeah.
so how did you manage all this? I mean, did you use a cloud server? Like
Yeah.
who's running all this stuff?
Well, my producer, Mandy Hart, she's the president of More Productions. So More Productions was the studio that had
Okay,
hired me. And so she had, and it was fortunate because this is 70 people, but it's over a
right.
period of 5 years. So
That's a lot of tracking. It's a lot of naming conventions.
it
That's a
is.
lot of stuff.
And
Yeah.
it got messy at times, but you know, it I think because I was able to do so much of it myself, I was able to keep really tight control. So I was able to go in and design every shot, basically.
Amazing. I
And
remember that. I remember you posting some imagery and,
yeah,
just again, going all the way back to Maurice Noble, bringing everything you had to bear,
yes, that's right.
everything from eye trace to,
Yep,
the golden triangle, everything
yep.
is in there. And you feel it and you could see it. And yeah, just, yeah, it's very beautifully crafted.
Yeah, thank you.
Really,
Yeah,
really well done.
it was like going to graduate school again. Just because working with the iconographers, it wasn't only a technical thing, it was just their process of how they approach their work.
Yeah.
Because an iconographer will pray over each layer of paint, for example, and invite the spirit to be a participant in their
Wow.
creation. And I was like, why don't I do that? You know what I mean? And so we
Yeah.
approached it this very same way, and it was very much because I didn't understand. I'm not from a Catholic or
Yeah.
Orthodox background. I am now much more so because I really love and appreciate so much of what they're doing in their worldview.
Yeah.
But it became a real worship. Every day I was going to church basically by working on this film.
Of course,
Um,
absolutely. Like I said, in that way, your work was your worship.
yes, that's
I
right.
mean,
Very much
100%.
so. Yeah.
Did you ever, whenever you're making something that really matters, like something like this, there is tremendous adversity.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot of principalities that can come against you in many ways.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel the project at risk of collapse?
Well, maybe my producers did. I never did because I knew that one way or another we would finish it, even if it took 30 years, we would get it done, you know. But it's interesting you bring that up because when I'm working on like with the Prodigal and with the 21, I I let the artists know that working on these projects can be dangerous.
Yes.
We've had people that have gotten into car accidents. We've had people that have had worse. We've had divorces, we've had mental breakdowns, we've had all kinds of attacks, and it's a really real thing, as you know. I
Yeah.
woke up one morning and my retina had torn in two places. I couldn't see
Mm.
out of this eye,
I
and it
remember you
was
tell me that. Yeah.
it's like, what am I going to do? And they rushed me in, and
Mm.
I still haven't gotten all my sight back, but um, just all kinds of things every day that just little things. But one thing that I knew was that this film was going to, whether I finished it or someone else finished it, if something happened to me,
Yeah,
but God, I could feel him working through this and through the artist. Several people on the crew came to faith um, during the production. And that's as big to me as the whole production process, and those relationships are as important as the final product for sure,
sure,
as
sure.
you know. So
Yeah.
you become a family, right?
It's absolutely a family, and in the end, that's all that matters are those relationships, and yeah,
Yeah,
people really get close,
yeah,
and it's such a big topic, and a lot of people don't like to go there, but it affects all of our lives.
yeah.
So, it's very, very important. So the 21 gets done. I think it was even shortlisted probably for an
Yes, right.
Oscar, which is
Yeah.
amazing. It's out there. It's getting translated. It's spreading around. Um, uh, just to touch a little bit more on the indie animation space, you get how did you get involved with Light of the World?
Well, I needed a job. Uh, I had been hired by accident. So I got this interview. They they
No
said, "Well,
accidents, Todd. No
no,
accidents.
that's true. I don't believe in accidents either." But um, Salvation Poem is the company, and John Schaefer and Brennan McPherson, they're producing
Good
it and
guys. Yeah.
directing it. Yeah. And so they'd heard about me from, just some of my other film work, and they
Was
were
the
going to do
21?
a
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I have to ask. Was the 21 already out or
no,
no? Okay.
no, not
But
yet. So
they
this
knew it was going on though, probably.
Yes, and they were
Okay.
very supportive of that.
Sorry,
But
go ahead.
it was like 2021 or something like that when we met. But they had they were going to originally do Light of the World as a cutout film, like cutout
Hmm.
paper. And so
Which was
because of the
kind of like the Prodigal. The Prodigal
prodigal,
is like
because of the
that. Yeah.
prodigal, they were interested in talking to me. And so I'm in the interview, and they keep talking about, oh, there's we love your work. We're big fans. Like, wow, I didn't know anybody even knew my work, existed. And then they just
Sure.
started describing, and then they go, we love that United like commercial you did. And I'm like, nah, it wasn't part of that.
That was
And they
Jamie's, right?
Jamie Caleri, yeah.
Yeah,
And
he's
so they
beautiful.
said, and we love this thing. I go, well, that wasn't me either. And they said, well, what did you do? And so, and so I showed them the Prodigal. I showed them like my work at like Cartoon Saloon and some of my other stuff. And they
Yeah.
go, okay, you're hired.
Yeah.
And so, and
So it's an
so,
accident, but not really.
yeah, right. And then we became really, really close, really
I
good
bet.
friends.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, anyway, and then I ended up just helping with story, helping out with some design work, and just helping kind of train some of the young people on the film.
Were you doing that remotely as well, or?
Partially, I moved to Wisconsin, Sparta,
Okay,
Wisconsin, for a period.
right.
Um,
And that's Salvation Poems headquarters,
Salvation
is that
Poem,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really, really good people. And then of course some other dear friends of ours, Tom
yeah,
Bancroft,
yeah,
co-directed as well, and some other great people that we know.
yeah.
Um, Fantastic. So you spend a bunch of time on Lighter World, and it's very much an independent animated
Oh
film, but
yes,
it gets
yeah,
theatrical release, which is wonderful, and I think they're still in the process of translations and moving forward, and it's a beautiful 2D animated film.
that's right.
Um,
And we
uh,
did that in Ireland as well. So
yes, I was just going to say, did you work with the Lighthouse guys? Did you know those
no, but
guys?
I helped make some introductions, and then I went over just to kind of check in on them at one point. Um, just
That's wonderful.
yeah,
That's
no,
wonderful. I
they're
didn't realize that.
yeah.
So, what are some of the things? Would you say there's any sort of misconceptions or myths about indie animation approach? We have so many of our colleagues now that are um, uh, in different transition, and I would say there's a lot of excitement going on in indie animation. Like it's crazy, and
It's
I
the
think
best stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and I think even though with all the craziness going on, I see it completely glass half full, and this is in a very exciting time
Yes.
for micro studios, for independents, for groups, collaborations, all that stuff.
Yep.
What could you share just based on all of this that you've gone through in terms of misconceptions or myths about independent animated
You,
film?
I think, and this is just how it's always worked for me. It's just every single project, I never knew how I was going to finish it. I never knew how it was going to be
Don't tell a
completed.
producer that.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't make any sense. It's like that's not a way to like make films. But for me, it was like, okay, I have this idea, and then people would come to the production. It was interesting enough, or you know, uh, we would figure out how to raise money, or certain people would be involved, or a studio would
Scrappy.
just pop up, and
Yep.
it was just all these things. And I never knew how I was gonna make a film. And
Yeah.
each time I made it one, I think I made six indie shorts now, and none of them have been produced the same way.
I know, and
Um,
that's beautiful. That's what's so awesome about it, quite frankly. You know,
so yeah,
One of the things I was just talking with a friend of mine recently, and I say it on here sometimes too a lot, but um, when you have restrictions, and indie animation absolutely presents restrictions or limitations, it forces you to get
yes, very
super
creative.
creative,
Yep,
and you wind up having different signatures because of that.
that's right.
When you launched into the your independent films, are you ever thinking budget at all, or are you just
Yes,
thinking about
yeah,
okay,
very,
good,
very much so.
good,
Yeah,
because that's one of the things that I really stress a lot, and I always tell whether it's my clients or even my internal team, I always say, guys, gals, team, uh, uh, we need to design into our budget. So
that's
it
right.
doesn't mean that we're not going to give you quality. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be incredibly appealing and engaging, but there's going to be a reason why we have to do something stylistically.
That's right.
And more times than not, that actually is a benefit. And I know that's not something that the younger me would have liked to have heard.
Yeah, yeah,
You
you're
know?
absolutely right. Yeah. And I think of it this way. It's like I pull a lot, like most of my stories are told from a cultural context. So I try to incorporate kind of cultural symbols and those things, and work into folk art and those things. And I know I can't compete with a Disney. I can't compete with some of the big studios with millions of dollars. I might have 20,000 if I'm lucky.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I try to make something that looks interesting. And that's why the experimental part of it, I never know if it's going to work
Yeah.
exactly. It's like that edge of design that's
Right.
exciting, whether you
Right.
don't, it might work, it might
Right.
fail,
Right.
but
But
you
the only way
figure it
to
out.
you have to try it, right?
Yeah,
That's the whole part of it, the R&D of it. And it's like, and in your process of trying to figure it out, you find a pathway that you didn't
that's right.
even realize.
That's
And that
right.
is the way it works. And that creates its own stylization because of it.
The,
So
the
yeah, no,
limitations are a blessing in many ways. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Well, we've got a few minutes left. I know we went way over
Okay.
an hour, but I
Sorry.
knew I would. I knew I would. I said before this, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I can get it into an hour. I have too many questions. And of course, your history is just so rich. I wish we were doing it in person, but this is just as good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
With the time we have left, you're doing teaching right now. You're doing
Yes.
lecturing. Are you working on any other productions right now?
Yeah, I'm helping with a few, like my producers from the 21. They've got a couple projects they're trying to get off the ground. And so I'm helping with that, designing that. I brought in some of my students onto some other projects.
Fantastic.
I'm trying to decide, I'm kind of praying about and deciding what my next project
Yeah.
is. The school's been so supportive. I have a research position, so I have a lighter class load so that I have more times for books and films
That's
and things like,
amazing.
which is incredible.
That's
Um,
incredible. Well,
and
and they're very fortunate to have you. Do you want to
oh,
name where you're teaching in case
I'm
someone's,
at yeah, University of Texas at Dallas is
yeah,
where I'm.
so if you're in the area and you're looking for a good place to go with an
Yeah.
incredible person at the helm there, go
Well,
check it out. So
man, the people on staff here, they've got some amazing teachers from the industry. And
fantastic.
at our age, a lot of us are looking for a new chapter in life, and that's what a lot of the gang here is like,
Yeah.
trying to
Well, and
make the
hopefully those young people can make the most of it, and
hope so.
much like us, realize who's teaching. So that's very important. Um, just to cap back with the indie space, do you think we are at a new renaissance of sorts with indie
Yes.
animation?
Yes,
Because the studios are having, they're going through some challenges right now, but
they are.
is there anything you can share about what you see, or how do you see the next 5 or 10 years, which is,
Yeah.
obviously we're seeing a lot of changes, and we'll talk about a couple more things I'm sure before we close out here, but what's your thoughts on the indie animation era that
Well,
we're in?
it's exciting because the tools are accessible. They're cheap enough that we can all use them. We can get an animation education online, uh,
Yeah.
which we couldn't do that before. Um, all these voices we've never heard before from all over the world are now able to speak, and they're able to collaborate with
Hmm.
others. And so we're getting stories that we've never heard of. We're getting looks that we've never heard of, ideas and from
Hmm.
places and that we've has have never had a voice before.
Hmm.
And that's exciting. I think the indie well, it's like uh what was the Wild Robot is a great example of. I think that was very definitely affected by just that whole indie kind of look. They said we can't keep doing what we're doing and having
Hmm.
it be successful. We have to dig deeper, at least
Yeah.
stylistically.
No, you're absolutely right. And Pixar's got, I think, the Gato, I think it is.
Yeah, right. They're
I
trying
think
out
that,
some new things.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
trying out some new things as well. And of course, Spider-Verse just blew the doors off of everybody,
exactly.
which is incredible. Before we go to our last things, since we had a couple minutes, one of the things on that we do at the end with Artist Lunchbox, and again, the whole metaphor is fulfilling your creative spirit and the nourishment that we all need as artists. But my producer drops a couple of questions into a lunchbox. If you were
Okay.
here in person, you'd
All
be
right.
opening it up yourself.
Okay.
But I will open it for you.
Excellent.
So I don't know what the questions are, and I'm just going to ask a couple of things. So hopefully they're things that work. So let's see. Excuse me. Um, uh, Looking back at your past roles or projects, is there one that you're most proud about? And I think I may know this already, or one that you wish got more attention?
That's interesting. The 21, I think, for me was the first time that I felt like I wasn't trying to please someone else.
Hmm.
All my other films, even my indie films, were kind of like, well, it has to have some kind of commercial value. It has to, because my shorts could lead to work that I could use to fund new shorts. Um, even though they're experimental. But this one, it was like it's so out there. It's like such a subject that no studio would ever pick up, that it had to be right. It had to be real. It had to be raw because it is such a raw
Hmm.
story.
Yeah, it is.
And so I put everything, all my years of 30 some years of animation experience, I put everything I had into this film, all of me.
Mm.
Emotionally, I was just dead at the end. I aged like 20 years in like
Oh,
five,
brother.
but
Yeah,
I wouldn't have changed it for the world. And my
yeah.
relationship with God grew in that. I grew personally, I grew artistically, getting all this feedback from these amazing artists from all over the world, iconographers from Egypt, Ukraine, people that had
Amazing.
been living with ISIS. I mean, a lot of the designers had
Mm.
experience with ISIS. Um, it was humbling, really humbling. And so that's the one I'm most proud of, just because of the people I worked with, the things I learned, the
Yeah.
the journey I went on. And it was the greatest honor for me to represent this very special story with these very special men, and that I would be the person to do that is incredible to me.
Ugh. Man, it gives me chills just thinking about it, and
Yeah.
it's phenomenal, and yeah, it's very moving, very moving. Wow, it's very powerful stuff. Uh, is there? He's got another one here. Is there a piece of artwork that you find yourself going back to for inspiration,
Um,
or an artist?
yeah, there's a few. Lind Ward is one, and Lind Ward was the woodcut artist that did
Hmm.
his first wordless. He was one of the early American graphic novelists. So 1929 is he put out his book called God's Man. I'm actually doing an adaptation of that right now.
In animation or
Yeah, yeah, for
wonderful.
film. So I'm working on that. Because there's some parallels to my own life that I
Yeah.
won't get into now. Um, but you know, all one of the big things for me also was these these Chinese woodcuts. So
Mm,
I know this is a strange thing, but I love Chinese woodcuts, like modern stuff from like the
right.
20th century, and just how they're able to communicate so much and so little. And not that I'm a advocate for communism or anything like that, but there's such beauty and artistry and like simplicity.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people were never trained. It's just these things that were passed down generation to generation, and there's just a lot there um,
Ah, so
that I
rich.
love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm taking the last one out of the lunchbox.
Okay.
So this is it. We're done with that. With the incredible variety of projects and genres you've worked in, and even just now, you just told me about another project that you're prepping. And like many of us, we may have 5 or 6 projects
Yeah, that's
that are
exactly right.
that are on the stove. One's getting cooked a little bit more, that one's simmering. So I totally get all that. Is there a project or a different genre that you haven't worked in or done that you'd love to be able to express yourself in?
Yeah. There's a story that um, it's her name is Emily Rose Deibler, I think his name. She was
Hmm.
a missionary in World War II in what's now Papua, and she
Wow.
was captured by the Japanese there. She was imprisoned. Her husband died in prison, and it's her story of faith. It's the most amazing. It's a novel. She wrote it herself. Incredible writer,
Hmm.
and she passed away a few years ago. But I've wanted to tell that story for a few years now, and I've been burning to do it. I can't seem to get the rights or to talk to people about it, the people that do have the rights. She had wanted it to be made into a film at one point, but stories like that just really like,
That's powerful stuff. That's very
yeah.
impactful. You go after the easy subjects, Todd. But, but one of the things that definitely strikes me about many of the things that you're doing and that you've done in recent years is the fact that you're leaving a legacy and you're leaving some very impactful stories that wouldn't have been able to be seen that way if it wasn't for somebody like you to come along.
Wow.
So that is very, very special. We got 8 billion people on the planet, but you're the one, or you and your team, that did the story for the 21
Right.
in an animated way. That is so special. So it is. It's very sobering when I think about it in those terms.
Well,
Um,
part of it is at this age, as you know, I don't know how many more films I have in me, if any. And
You've
so I
got a
want
lot. You got a
to,
lot.
I pray so, but these are the stories that I grew up reading and that all these missionary stories and these stories of faith that have moved me and moved me in my faith because I had
Yeah.
wandered away for a while and I picked up Hudson Taylor's book and I'd read that and
Mm.
it's like wow, and then I read another and another, and these stories. My own uncle was a missionary in Bolivia for 50 years, and I remember him
Wow.
telling me he went in 1947 down to Bolivia, and as he was going down, he was a second group. So the first group had gone down like the year before, or 2 years before. They'd all been killed. And so
Mm.
he was going down not knowing what was going to meet him, but knowing he was following his calling. And then of course he one of the I'll make this quick, but one of the things that he found was that the tribes there, one of their rituals was leaving their firstborn in the forest as kind of a sacrifice. And so he would go around gathering these children and built these orphanages. And so he was able to change the lives of all these children. And that to me is a legacy, you know. But people don't know these stories. And so I think part of what my calling is twofold: to keep telling these stories, but then to pass on my knowledge. That's why I'm at the university, to help young people.
I love it.
Because if you can multiply yourself, you can do so much more. I mean, I'm just like this little grain of sand, you know. But if I can help,
scratching the surface.
Yeah.
So
that's I feel really convicted about passing on that knowledge. And
well, you're doing it, you're living it, and it's incredible. You know, I don't even have to. That last question I pulled out of the lunchbox kind of summed up a whole bunch of things that I was going to ask in terms of, you know, what you're most proud of, but you pretty much summed that up. Is there anything else that do you have any more books coming up? Anything?
Yeah. So
you share?
Yeah. So Don Hall and I, we were Maurice left his personal artwork collection to us.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
So we've been sitting on it 20 years or more, and during the fires this last year in Pasadena, and so we almost lost it. So we said, okay, let's scan these things, let's get it in book form. So we're going to have that. We're going to have a folio or something of his personal artwork. It's kind of a companion piece to the Noble approach. Great. And then I'm working on an art book of the 21, kind of showing the stylistic,
like an art of
evolution.
Right? Like an art of
an art of book, And
that would be beautiful because that'll be beautiful. I definitely want to know about that one because I remember seeing a bunch of little images that you guys would put up, and I'd be like, oh, it's beautiful, you know, just framing things with light and graphical shapes, and I always love composition and layout, so that's amazing. Well, we'll look forward to both of those.
Thank you.
Is there any place that people can find you? I'll add it into the links. I know you said the 37.
37stories.com. That's for our Prodigal website. Most of my stuff I keep pretty current on Instagram, so it's just Tod Polson. That's my Instagram, TODPOLSON. Easy enough to find that.
We'll put the links in the bottom too. So.
And that's where I keep most of my updates, you know.
Fantastic. Well, Tod, this has been super special. I can't thank you enough. I wish you were here. We could have actually had lunch because that's typically how we do it. We have lunch and then we talk, and then make you some nice coffee. But super special. It's just such a pleasure to spend time with you. I love your heart. We both love God, and I think it's amazing
I admire what you've been doing these last few years. Just incredible work. So
well, thank you, brother. We just keep, you know, I like to say we just keep falling forward.
Yeah,
we gotta just keep moving forward. You know, it's like you just keep taking steps and make something great. You know,
yes,
like
that's
just
right.
Put your heart into it, and you'll make something really beautiful. And don't worry about your limitations.
That's right.
Just make it. Just make it. Get it out there because we don't know how many things we can get out before we check out.
That's right. Exactly.
So.
Right.
Well, thank you for joining us on the Artist Lunchbox. We'll see you again real soon, and have a great day.
Yeah. Bye.